I'd like to know why this policewoman would suddenly dig up the bones of a man who's been missing for 50 years.
A killer from the past.
You're sure it was him?
I know it was him.
Has returned.
Word sister was carved into her chest.
To start a new generation of terror.
Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Most Unwanted, an X-Files podcast.
You're very news reporter again. You remind me
because it's just because I have the first line.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like two different podcasts every week. I just feel like it's because you know when you've got like some podcasts where it's like all enthusiasm, all shouting, all like in your face, like excitement, and then you have some which is like more like Kane and Rince. We spoke about Kane and Rince in past podcasts, and they're very much like, hello and welcome to this episode, and we're going to dissect it, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And that's you, but it's two different podcasts.
It starts that way.
Yeah, and then I interrupt, and then it goes like it's this.
By the way, I'm Luke, and this is Checks, if you've never listened before.
Hey, guys.
That was a weird intro, and he just started talking. But anyway, it's your week.
Yeah,
I'll keep it loose now.
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I haven't really done anything. But the thing is, it's that post-New Year, I don't know about you, I got paid really early in December.
I'm living on about £10.
Oh, mate.
I have no money.
Brassic. Yeah. I tell you that right now.
This is where we start our Patreon. And if anyone wants to...
just send us food, please. Yeah, I'm just like, I've got my birthday coming up.
I know,
right?
yeah.
That is the worst birthday I've never met anyone with a worse birthday than
Thanks,
me.
Mom.
My birthday's on the 23rd of January, and
Dean's is on the 25th as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It's the worst because it's the month after. Month after Christmas, month after New Year, everyone's already paid out. They get paid early, so they've got to try and last a wage for longer, or like a monthly wage. And it's right before payday as well. Do you think I can get anybody out for my birthday?
It's literally the weekend before. I get paid. If you don't go out that weekend, I get paid on the Monday. I can go out the next weekend.
I think that's
ridiculous.
I'm going to have to end up doing that. I'm literally going to have to celebrate my birthday in February from now on.
Yeah. Well, Jesus celebrates his birthday in December, and it was apparently in summer, wasn't it?
Oh, he's playing it off. He wants a Christmas birthday, does he?
Yeah, he's one of them. Have you heard that, by the way? Apparently,
I have heard that.
The theory
well, if you're not religious, the idea is Jesus was a real person, but he was just a carpenter. He wasn't obviously he wasn't something
basically like the life of Brian is what it sounds like.
Basically.
But anyway, let's not go into a religious discussion.
No, let's go into a religious discussion. Do you think, if you're taking a non-religious standpoint on it,
you should celebrate Christmas in summer?
No. What I want to know is, how do you think it started? Do you think Jesus was just a really good doctor? Maybe he didn't cure
or a magician. I'm reminded of Family Guy now. Do you know? It's he's got the 2-finger trick, and then he just goes.
Oh yeah, everyone's amazed.
It's hard to do that over an audio format. But basically, do you know the trick where he's got 1 finger in each hand and then bashes it? He's got 2. He just does that, and he's just going. What? That's what it just reminded me of. But anyway, yeah.
How was your week?
Yeah, let's carry on with that. My week's been okay. I'm trying to think. What will I be doing this week? Nothing really. Again, like you said, it's that January lull.
January blues.
Yeah, no one does anything. Typically in January, it's a time where you can't really go out because you can't afford it. You can't really buy anything like yourself. So you go through stuff that you've already done or stuff that you've for me, it's games that I've bought a while ago and never finished. I'm like, oh, I'll get back to that and I'll finish that. So So yeah, I'm just...
Oh, I tell you something that I am doing,
Yeah.
being as I'm spending a lot more time in the house this month.
Yeah.
Me and my fiance have set ourselves a little project for 2019. We are going to try and... I've made a list of the...
I checked it twice. Sorry, we're a month too late with that.
You can't do that. Not in January? Come on, Luke.
Yeah. Well,
so,
better late than never.
So, I've made a list of the top 250 IMDb... movies rated on IMDb. And I'm challenging myself this year to watch the top 250 films of all time. So I marked... Obviously, we're going to... Otherwise, I'll be watching one every other day. So I've marked off all the ones I've already seen.
Wait, when you did put that up, I did think you meant all the 250, even if you'd watched them before. And I worked it out. I was like, that's a lot. I worked out that it would be 4 films a week. So you'd be watching one pretty much every working day.
And I got to fit in X-Files.
Yeah. I'd be like, you are never going to do that in a million years.
Well, no, I'm... So, yeah, basically, we've marked off the ones that we've seen. And we're just, if ever we want to watch a film now, we go straight to that list. We don't have to sort of worry about browsing through Netflix for 4 hours and then not picking anything.
So what I mentioned the other day when about having a list of things that you want to get to. Did I mention it on the podcast or was it?
I think it was on the podcast, yeah.
Just about having a list of things that you actually want to watch. It stops you from getting stuck into a cycle.
We can literally just go, bang, there you go, I'm going to watch that. And it's amazing the films that you've missed, as I'm actually marking them off, there's films that I've missed that, you'd have thought that I've seen. I said to you before we started recording, I've never seen Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
Now, you'd have thought that I'd seen that, and I just never got round to it.
Do you know what, though? Some films like that, you don't think about them because you've seen enough.
They're so ingrained in pop culture.
If you've seen enough of it, you just don't think about it to watch because you think, well, I've seen... Oh, no, I haven't.
Yeah, I could tell you everything about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the same as 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's so ingrained in pop culture, but...
You feel like you've seen it even if you've not.
Exactly right. But it is interesting, and it's interesting to sort of go through and the films that I've seen that Jem hasn't and Jem's seen that I haven't. Now, I tend to be a lot more... I'm passionate about films. I'm sure the listeners know that about me by now. I absolutely adore films. So I tend to have watched a lot more, especially the cult classics and even the little indie films that have done really well. So I thought I'd absolutely storm it on how many I've watched compared to Jem. Oh, but Jem loves Studio Ghibli, the animation films. And there's so many Studio Ghibli animation films. So she caught up with me. I was so unimpressed.
Just out of interest, how many have you watched of the 250? Do you know off the top of your head?
I've watched about 100.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm well on my way.
150. That's more doable, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to remember, 50 of those out of that list are obscure foreign films that I've never even heard of, and then another 100 of films from between 1920 to 1950.
Yeah.
Which, again, I've never I love old films. It's a Wonderful Life is one of my top 3 films of all time. Never seen Casablanca. I need to watch these. I'm set myself a challenge this year to watch as many as I can. And it's just, if I'm going to watch a film, I might as well be one of the best films ever made. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's my theory behind it.
I've started not doing something similar to that. I always try and, as I mentioned before, do these that game book club and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I've started to try and, because I never used to keep track and I always used to forget. I'm trying to write down anything that I have watched and completed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just so I know if I've crossed it off the list, basically. Because there's sometimes where you just forget. You go, have I seen this all the way through? Or and there's that many where you come to it and you just can't remember what's happened in it. But at least if I've got it ticked off and said I've done it. So if I don't remember, it's either not that memorable.
In which case, why would you want to rewatch it? Yeah.
Or I don't know. Maybe there's someone else going on upstairs. But we'll worry about that in a few years' time. But anyway, yeah. No, I know what you mean. It is sort of good as well. Once you come to the end of the year, if you're sort of crossing stuff off on a list, to sort of see the progress of, oh wow, I got through 50 films or something this year. Or I know a load of people do with challenges and stuff. I'm sure I saw somebody on Twitter. I don't know how they did it, because this would drive me insane.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
They tried to watch 365 films in a year.
It definitely wasn't what I was going to say.
Oh, really?
Go on, what was... Did that work?
I don't know if they did it, but, I mean, the only way they did it was... I think they weren't, like, working a 9-to-5 job, you know what I mean? They were working a different type of job. But basically, they would watch, like, 2 films in a day sometimes, so they could take days off.
Yeah, you'd have to, wouldn't you?
That sounds like it's so much work. That is basically a second job there, you know what I mean? Because you're having to order, like, get all these films. Because you can't just wing it, you know what I mean? Because then you end up just watching films that you hate. And it's like, oh. So, yeah, it just seems a lot of work. And, yeah, I don't know if I could do that.
I don't know why I thought... But what I thought you were going to say is completely irrelevant to the conversation. But did you ever see that... there was I don't know whether it was a guy or a girl on Twitter. But they'd been posting... just random posts about their life for about 3 years, and then they got really excited, but no one knew what they was getting excited about. Bear in mind, he had like she had 400 followers, something like that. Nothing special.
Yeah.
And then after 3 or 4 years, they was counting down to something, and then finally, they said, "I've done it. Read the first words of all of my tweets from the beginning," and it literally was the Bohemian Rhapsody. From start to finish.
Wow.
Every tweet that they'd done starts with that one word. It's an incredible project. And I was like, that's so impressive. But I don't know why that related to anything you were saying. And as soon as I heard you say Twitter, I was like, is it this? Is it? I don't know why I got so excited.
To be fair, though, I do that. Like, you'll say something to me, and then I'll just think of something. And I'll go, that's not really related. I don't know why that's popped into my head. I forgot what I was going to say. No, there was something else. But
we are Tangent Kings.
Tangent Kings.
TKs.
That's what we'll change the name of the podcast to. Or if we ever do a podcast where we don't do anything, we'll just call it Tangent Kings.
Tangent Kings is a great podcast name, actually.
TM it right now. If anyone steals it, we're coming for you.
We are coming for you. Actually, can you trademark it by just saying it's our idea?
Yeah. Tangent Kings TM, property of Luke Costin and Daniel Checkley. Address... No. I mean, that's probably enough.
Look out for that in 2020.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't think I've enough time in the day to do any more podcasts. Oh, anyway. I mean, that's enough banter, isn't it?
You don't use my line from last week. Think of your own lines, Luke. You're the news reporter. Come on, what's the serious way to get into the episode?
And finally, we'll get on to this episode of Most Unwanted. Where we talk about Aubrey. Now, do you have a segue for Aubrey, Daniel Checkley? Is it how official is that?
Not really.
Don't know why I keep getting close to the mic. I'm probably popping the...
Aubrey. No, I don't.
No, neither do I. Let's just move on. If you have one at home, send it in.
Yeah.
We'll re-record this.
Yeah, because that's worth it.
We'll pop it in. But anyway, on with the show. So this episode, episode 12, season 2, entitled Aubrey, it was directed by Rob Bowman, written by Sarah B. Charno. That's the first female writing credit we've had, isn't it?
I wouldn't like to say one way or the other because I don't know.
I don't feel like I've heard a female name as a writing credit before. So that's pretty cool, to be fair. Like, actually getting a more diverse writing staff, and
Could I interrupt for a few moments?
Yeah.
I just want full disclosure to all our listeners.
Yeah.
My phone is currently on 1% battery, so I'm winging this episode.
Which has all of the notes.
Yeah, I'm winging this episode.
So if the quality dips, we have a...
Well, no.
We have a scapegoat.
You're doing all the heavy lifting here, and I'm here.
What am I, the ant of Most Unwanted?
You're the ant, and I am the crumbs. No, that's a very niche joke. No one will understand that outside of the UK.
I know, but it made me laugh.
I don't
want to be the ant of the ant and deck.
You're not the ant of the ant and deck. Yeah. You're the ant of the Most Unwanted podcast. I'm the delicious crumbs of a cookie. Okay, so you carry me along, and people just enjoy my reactions.
Who's the queen?
Who's
the listeners.
The listeners are the queen.
Yeah, you're the queen of our hive. Listeners.
Exactly. So the podcast is the hive, right? The listeners are the queen, and I'm just like this little delicious crumb from a cookie, and then you're doing the heavy lifting, taking me back to the queen. So delivering me to the queen.
Where the queen will eat you. I don't know what that symbolises.
It's enjoying the entertainment, soaking it up. Yeah. See what I'm saying? So if you come on, it's simple enough metaphor, Luke.
The original air dates. The original air date was January the 6th, 1995. So we've moved on another year now.
It's 2 years. 2 years worth of episodes that we've gone through so far.
I know, yeah. Powering through. Well, we're at halfway point now of season 2, so...
Pretty much. I'm looking forward to it.
I know, yeah.
This season seems to be going a lot quicker than the last.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? I think that's partly due to... We've had a lot more mythology episodes, you know what I mean?
I think it's partly due to that 3-episode run in the middle, which was like Dwayne Barry, Ascension, and what was the other...
It was the one where Scully's in a coma, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember for the life of me what it was. We'll have a look at it later. But
people at home are screaming at us.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? But
anyway.
That one felt like a miniature series in itself. So we just blasted through that.
Right. So we start this episode at the police headquarters in Aubrey, Missouri. Again, finding out quite quickly that that's why the episode is called this.
Yep.
Not a crossover with Twin Peaks, unfortunately.
No, that as you predicted last week.
No, not the case.
You were wrong.
We see Detective Joe Darnell and Lieutenant How do we say lieutenant, and I don't know why that is.
No, we say lieutenant.
No, in England, like the word is pronounced lieutenant.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know why, because there's not.
No, lieutenant's a different thing, isn't it?
Honestly, it's spelled exactly the same way.
And we call it lieutenant.
We call it lieutenant. Yeah.
That is crazy. Yeah. I've only ever known it as lieutenants.
It's because American shows always call them lieutenant.
No, but they're right because it's spelled.
I mean,
lieutenant.
it is spelled lieutenant.
We can't just take a word and add an F and hope for the best.
I know, but we have to be arrogant about the English language, don't we? It's just part of being British, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I'm not a fan of this.
Well, anyway, we're reviewing an American show, so we'll call him Lieutenant Brian Tillman.
Can we call him Lieutenant?
Get out. We don't find out straight away, but Lieutenant Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman's a wrestler. Interestingly, he did an angle where Stone Cold Steve Austin tried to break into his house, so he shot him with a gun. Oh, that's 90s wrestling at its height. There
anyway, you go.
Tangents. Lieutenant Brian Tillman is played by Terry O'Quinn, a very famous face to us.
For us.
Yeah.
From one of our favourite shows, Lost. I got very excited when I saw this.
I heard his voice and instantly I was like,
it's John Locke.
It's John Locke.
Oh, I love it.
And to be fair, his character through the episode is it's basically Locke.
Well, it's Locke before he gets on the island.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's the non-believer Locke.
Yeah. To be fair, he always seems to play that kind of character, that sort of man who's struggling to
come to grips with
things. Yeah, he's always playing the same character. But yeah, I loved him in it.
The moustache doesn't suit him, does it?
Neither does hair.
Really. No, hair definitely doesn't suit him. I love Lost.
I know.
Lost is such a great show. Oh, every time we talk about it, I just want to watch it through again. I love it so much. Just the characters. Oh, it's amazing.
We could wax lyrical about this.
And
probably do another podcast on it.
Wink, wink. Don't expect it. It's not coming. We've still got 10 seasons of X-Files to go.
Yeah. What, 2022 when we finish this?
I think it's going to be later than that because we had a lot more episodes.
Yeah, and we had breaks as well.
Yeah, we're doing specials and we do end of season reviews.
Just to let people know, you're in for a long ride.
But we're there. We're
there for you.
You're marching, carrying the delicious cookie crumb that is me. What? That's...
They're not. They've dropped this cookie and ran. With those metaphors. Right, scene 1. They enter. This is Brian Tillman and Joe Darnell.
Locke.
Should we just refer to him as Locke?
Yeah, I think we should, because that's what I'm going to be doing.
They enter the police station and they're talking about a psycho, and they say there's blood everywhere. He mentions stores carrying strap razors. So again, we don't really know what's happening here. We just know that they're talking about some kind of...
Yeah.
We don't even know it's a murder at this point, some kind of attack.
Yeah, to be honest, I assume this was just background noise. It's only later on, because like about halfway through the episode, I realised what had happened, because it actually becomes a part of like the case he's working on, but you're not supposed to know about it at the start.
Yeah. You just think it's just work.
I thought it was background noise in the police station, that's all it was, but it's interesting that looking back on it now, I go, oh, hang on, no, it does play into it later on in the episode.
We see Tillman, and he tells Darnell not to mention anything about the sisters to the press. And we also see a woman who we find out Inspector Moreau, or BJ Moreau, watching Tillman as he's on the phone. Moreau then follows Tillman into his office, and she says that he didn't show for dinner last night. At this point, I thought, oh, are they a husband and wife sort of working on the same team?
Yeah.
Not the case, as we find out. And she's obviously upset that he didn't turn up for dinner. The coroner calls and interrupts at this point. And Morrow starts writing on a piece of paper and then hands it over to Tillman. And it just says, I'm pregnant.
What a way to find out.
He looks shocked and sort of stops his conversation with the coroner immediately. And then he writes on the piece of paper as well. And he gives it her, and it's an address. He says that they can talk there.
I thought he was going to write down, like, are you sure? And they have like this weird conversation. Back and forth like they're in school.
Yeah.
Do you like me? Tick yes.
Yeah. Fold this over, and there's a hidden message inside. And we find that this is the address of a motel where it says they can talk later. And then we see the neon sign of this motel. Morrow arrives. And as she tries to enter the motel room, she struggles to actually put the key in the door. She starts getting blurred vision, and she starts hearing voices around her as well. And this is when we see this like flashback scene as a car approaches, and we then see this car driving through a field, and it's got this weird like frame rate effect on it. This is to sort of symbolise that this isn't happening.
Yeah, it's got like a tint to it as well, like a bluish tint.
Yeah.
Which tends to signify that it's a different scene.
Yeah, exactly.
It's usually a memory. Like a blue tint usually signifies a memory, whereas an orange tint tends to, and not all the time, but it tends to signify the future. Just a little bit of knowledge there for the filmmaking. There's
all stuff like that with films as well, like green tints are meant to show something's off about the world that you're in, because you see it in like I saw it in examples of The Ring and The Matrix. There's like both of those, like the scenes that are green.
It's very clever, and it's all about how your mind works as well,
because colours signify certain things to you, don't they? So.
And if you don't mind me going off on a little tangent,
go for it. Would we at most unwanted be upset with a tangent?
If you've not seen, well, I know you have seen, but if you've seen the Avengers Infinity War trailer, I would advise you go back and watch it again.
The new one, or the
new one for the not the Infinity War Endgame,
yeah.
Avengers Endgame trailer. I would advise you go back and watch it again, because the Russo brothers are so good. You watch every character introduced, and they're all introduced in a tint of a Power Stone.
Oh, I did not even pick that up.
Stark is introduced in that green room, and then you've got like the red of Tokyo on Hawkeye's face. They've all got their particular time stone that's going to be representing them through the film. Phenomenal work.
That's because pretty good, yeah.
It doesn't need to be done. They did not need that. Let's be honest. Avengers doesn't need any more hype than it's got.
I said that to you when the trailer first came, and I was like, who are they advertising this to?
Yeah, exactly. People are going to see this film. So it's phenomenal. Russo brothers know what they're doing. And I just thought that was talking about the tint, thought that was incredible. A little detail like that, literally no one's picked up on. Like, I've seen a few people talk about it and that's it, but very interesting.
I couldn't believe where the Russo brothers came from, because I've only ever known them as Marvel directors.
Yeah.
I went back and watched, I was telling you the other day about watching Arrested Development.
Yes.
I just started watching it from the beginning, because I'd heard it's good. I thought, I'll give it a go. First episode comes on, credits, directors, and I forgot their names, Anthony and something, Russo, is it? I was like, hang on a bit. I didn't know they did this. So yeah, they started in comedy, I guess.
Great directors. Really, really super.
Anyway, back to the show. We see this car driving through a field, and there seems to be a body or something in the back of the car. I mean, it's like in a bag, but you can assume that it's a body. They start burying it, and you assume that it's an officer of some kind because there's some kind of badge. We then cut to Moreau, who's digging in this field where we assume the body's buried, and she finds bones, and she also finds an FBI badge. And then we cut to the opening credits. So, bit of a weird opening.
Yeah, it's actually interesting way to watch it at the moment, because this is the first episode, little insight for the listeners, that we've watched together. In the sense of, I tried to watch it, the file got corrupted on my phone, so I couldn't watch it when I intended to. So we actually watched it before recording. Now, we sort of made a deal not to talk about it until recording this, because what's the point in knowing what each other's going to say?
Yeah, it's a very boring scene as we're both sat there just not talking.
Sat there in silence. But what I did say was this: after this first scene, I turned to Luke and I said, I don't know what's going on here. Because it was just a bit all over the place, and I suppose it's supposed to be like that for the reveal later on. Definitely got my interest, but to be fair, I think my interest was already peaked when I saw Locke.
Definitely.
I know it sounds silly, but like, you see an actor that you like, I'm immediately invested because I want to see what this character's going to do.
What actually happens with it,
So I can't tell whether it was the intro or the character, but regardless, my interest was peaked.
Yeah, to be fair, like, this episode, and we'll get into it later on with more of the reveals and that, I think it handled that quite well. Like,
I would agree.
It slowly revealed more and more of the plot, but never to the point where you knew what was exactly happening. And then when you finally get the big reveal of what it was, it makes sense backwards.
Yeah, you know what? We'll get to it when we get to it, so it's fine.
We then, after the credits, go to the FBI headquarters. And we see Mulder examining some dental x-rays on a light board. Scully walks in and she asks him about cavities, and he jokes that he brushes after every meal. Scully notices that there's some dental abnormalities in the x-rays. I forgot what they were called then. In the x-rays. And she says that they look like they'll be a match. And Mulder says that they belong to Special Agent Sam Chaney. He said that he's a legend in the FBI, as he worked on something which were at the time called stranger killings, and they would now call them serial murders.
Seems so strange that serial killing wasn't even a term. 70 years ago, or however long this was.
That's the thing. I suppose policing just keeps evolving, doesn't it? So back in those days, and well,
especially like 60, 70 years ago, the technology wasn't there to figure out whether murders were, unless they were specifically the exact same murder multiple times. If it was a serial killing, a lot of the time people didn't know.
That's how a load of people got away with it, and then it's only now that some people are being convicted over this stuff through DNA and stuff like that. So he says that Chaney and his partner, who we later find is called Ledbetter or Leadbeater, I think. They don't really explore this character. It's mainly Chaney they talk about. They say that they disappeared while they were investigating a murder in Aubrey, Missouri in 1942. And then they explain what we just saw, basically, and that had happened 2 days ago. Mulder's interested in this case because he says that the ideas that these two had were at the time unpopular, which was using psychology to solve crimes, to which Scully paints the comparison that this is basically what they're doing. He says that there's also another mystery, though. He says he wants to know why Moreau, suddenly drove her car into a field the size of Rhode Island and dug up the bones of a man who's been missing for 50 years.
Very good question. One that I'm asking as well.
It is suspect. He then also makes a joke about being intrigued in women who are named BJ. I don't get this bit. Like,
I think I get it.
I get it, but it seems a bit smutty for a...
Yeah, maybe there's a joke that we're not... I don't think... It can't be the joke that we're thinking of.
It seems too, like I said, too smutty for X-Files. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so maybe it's a joke that we're not picking up on.
Yeah, I mean...
Are there any famous women called BJ? I don't want to type in BJ into Google.
Yeah, don't type BJ women in Google. That's not... Yeah, that's not a good safe search to turn
up. For the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. I guess, it might be something that's lost on us 20 years later. You know what I mean? Like, it might be something at the time. But anyway, we then cut to the crime. Don't tell me you've actually done it.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Don't search that.
Yeah. And if you do, make sure safe search is on. And even that probably won't save you. Anyway, we cut to the crime scene and we see a shot of somebody shoveling some dirt. We pull back to see the crime scene. An area of the field's all staked off. And we see Mulder and Scully are talking to Morrow, and Tillman is standing off.
Who?
Oh, sorry, John Locke.
Yeah.
Is standing... he's overseeing the excavation. Morrow says that she basically saw a dog digging up some earth, and she investigated it, and that's where she found the grave. Mulder says that at the time she couldn't give a report of her actions due to... She said
she didn't know. She basically said she doesn't know how she got there.
Exactly. And she said that it was late and she was shocked, and that's why she couldn't give a report. When he asks why she was out there, she said that she had an engine failure. Basically, her car was stuck. We see Tillman listening in and sort of brooding. It's fine. Unlike John Locke to brood.
I was just wondering, like, why is he standing around? Like, I don't understand. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, why? What's he got involved? Like, he obviously doesn't believe she's the killer, like 50 years ago. So
yeah,
why is he so protective and defensive?
I guess if this is we're led to believe that this is his mistress, essentially, isn't it?
Maybe, and it is general protectiveness of it, or is he scared that?
I think he does love her. To be honest, I think that's the point in it, that he's sort of protective of her.
And fair enough. I can buy that.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got anyway.
It just seemed a bit weird because he seemed very protective over her, and like it made no sense. Like at the end of the day, she can't be stunned for this because it was 50 years ago. However long it was. She wasn't even born at this point. Exactly. So
but anyway, maybe he's just been there, just as a friend, I guess. So, who knows? But yeah, Mulder says that her car, he asks where her car was, and she tells him, and he works out that was about 500 yards from the dig site. And
it's a long way to see a dog.
Yeah, he asked the question of, how did you see a dog digging in like night time at 500 yards away? And she sort of freezes up at this point, but Tillman fills in the rest of the story. Oh, sorry, John Locke.
I'm going to stop doing that because I know that's going to play havoc with your notes.
yeah. And somebody at home's like, I don't watch Lost. I don't care. I didn't really pick up on what he said here, but he basically fills in the rest of the story and lies for her, essentially.
Yeah, he basically mocks the agent, saying, well, like, obviously she didn't do it. Yeah. Like, I think he turns around and says, are you seriously... You seem more interested in how she found it as to rather than what happened here and how he ended up here. Which is a very good question.
Yeah.
To be fair.
And then Mulder starts asking Morrow if she has premonitions or if she has dreams of like things that she sees.
Yeah.
Just sounds a weird way of saying it, but basically he's asking if she's seen things from the future or the past or whatever. And Tillman at this point just laughs it off.
Yeah.
What's this got to do with anything? and it basically tells them they've got a lot to do. If they've got any more questions, they can call him. They need to leave. So they both go, and Mulder watches on. We then cut to the coroner's office, and we see a close-up of a bone fragment, and we see that Scully's examining these bones that they've dug up. She says that the bones are in good condition, but there are cuts in the bones, and she thinks initially that maybe the field was tilled after the body was buried, and that explains the cuts. Mulder starts reading through Cheney's diary, and there's this poetic passage about the nature of monsters and men.
Which plays a big part into this story going forward. I think the whole nurture versus nature debate comes up quite a bit in this.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is always a very interesting topic. As I said, we can touch upon that when we get to it.
I didn't get the full excerpt because it's the actual quote itself isn't that important.
It's not.
It's basically the what they're trying to say about it. Scully says that it's poetic, but it doesn't really help, and then asks about the 1942 murders. Mulder says that the press called them the slash killer. Says there were 3 victims who were women aged 25 to 30. He hit them on the head and then carved sister on their chest and painted it on the wall in blood. He says that they later died by bleeding to death. Scully then thinks that maybe the cuts on the ribs actually are a razor. And Mulder asks if this could be spelling out a word. And she says that basically they'd have to digitally scan it in. So we cut to them after they've scanned everything in. We get some computer stuff going
Jiggery.
on. Yeah. Mulder also says that he's called, I think it's the mechanic, and basically says that BJ's car's been tuned recently. So she lied about the engine failure anyway. Scully says that she was in the woods because she was going to the motel. And she just nails it straight away. She says that BJ and Tillman are having an affair. And Mulder's sort of a bit confused by this. I did like that Mulder can make a random assumption about
and get it right all the time
about a spooky crime, basically about these weird things going on, but he just can't read normal people.
No, he cannot.
No,
that takes just a woman's intuition. I think is what Scully says.
What she is, but yeah, I did find this quite funny. It's like we've said in the past that Mulder's a bit...
He's blind to emotions and stuff like that,
he's not very tactful, and I think this is a good indication of that Scully can see these human relationships where it's over his head. We get some computer bullshit next where it scans and tries to match up the rib cuts with a previous case.
As a guy that works in IT, doesn't this bother you?
No, but I heard the best description of something. It was listening to another podcast actually. We were talking about science in plots and stuff, and it pretty much hit the nail on the head of the way I see science and computers and stuff in stories. If the entire story is about science, then the science needs to be bang on accurate. You know what I mean? Like in Arrival, the language in that is really accurate to how you would imagine that. Starship Troopers, on the other hand, the aliens
it's
in that...
It's a side product, isn't it?
Yeah. The aliens in that are basically an allegory for telling a story about American expansion and stuff like that, and nationalism. Doesn't matter.
Just take creative license. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, if you're going to use science as a way to sort of expand the story, then take as much creative license as you want, because it's don't get bogged down in it.
That's the thing. So basically, if it's a hard science story, then stick to the rules. If it's not, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to bash Star Wars for having a laser sword would just fire into the sky endlessly because lights would keep going. So who cares? You know what I mean? There's so much stuff in I think people. You see online, people tearing apart films for being, the science of that wasn't accurate. And it's but it's a film where a man flies through space, or something who cares? It doesn't matter. So in this, it doesn't really bother me because it's just there to pass a
facilitate the story.
Exactly. If the entire story was about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a computer virus, I guess.
Yeah.
And the computer virus was just doing stuff that you'd be like, oh, that's not how computer viruses work. That's when it gets a bit, not offensive, but where you're like,
Offensive. I am
this
offended.
offends me. You know what I mean? Like that's where it sort of gets.
Yeah,
Where
I know what you mean.
Where you throw the plot away, but in this, who cares?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I get what you mean.
But anyway, the computer doesn't read a match. Mulder asks, "What if this is trying to spell out another word?" So they do some more computer bullshit, and they lower the percentages of what it has to match with. Morrow enters and asks if they've made any progress.
Can I, again, just a quick interruption there. I'm sure you'll agree with me that I called that it was going to say brother right now.
You did.
It was at this point in the story I turned to Luke, was like, I bet you it says brother.
So
and then done.
The Genius of the Year award goes to...
I'd like to thank my parents.
Yeah, Morrow enters and asks if they've made any more progress. And they say that Cheney might have been a victim of the killer. Morrow looks at the skeleton and touches it and starts having this like weird sort of, you can tell it's a flashback.
Yeah.
And she sees Cheney get hit and slashed. And she asks to be excused as she starts feeling sick. And Mulder looks at Scully as he realizes maybe Scully's right.
Yeah.
Scully follows her into the bathroom as she's like sort of wiping her mouth. She's probably just vomited. I think that's the implication here.
Yeah.
Scully,
morning sickness.
Yeah. And Scully says that it's difficult to have feelings for people at work, letting her know that she's clocked it basically already.
Or, well, just what's this saying about Scully though?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
How does she know? How does she know it's difficult? Just something to ponder. I'm not saying.
I took it as maybe it's like people from the past, because doesn't she have one of her boyfriends in one of the earlier episodes is ex-FBI or something like that?
I can't remember, to be honest.
Isn't it the guy who gets taken over by like Lazarus, the criminal spirit?
No, he wasn't.
Wasn't that her ex-boyfriend?
Oh wait, I can't remember, to be honest.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
Of an episode we didn't really
But
like.
I still like to think she's talking about Mulder.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely read that as maybe that being Mulder.
It's just a throwaway line, but you know, maybe a little wink to the camera wouldn't have gone amiss.
Who knows?
I think it would have taken us out of the episode.
Yeah, a bit of fourth wall breaking doesn't really work in X-Files,
not 2 seasons in.
All of a sudden she turns into Deadpool and you're like, what's going on here? And then Scully just comes straight out with it and asks if she's pregnant. BJ asks if it's shows, and she starts saying she says now why her mother only had one kid. She said she knew about the nausea, but not about the nightmares.
I've never heard of nightmares.
I've never heard of yeah. It's a strange thing to say.
I wonder what she means by it.
Yeah, we'll find out. And she starts explaining about the nightmare she's been having, about being in a house, and she sees a woman who's hurt, and a man's reflection who she recognises.
But doesn't know.
Doesn't know, yeah. She says she remembers the blood the most, and says she hasn't told anyone about these dreams because she's worried that they might think it's just related to pregnancy. Again, I've never heard of anyone talking about nightmares during pregnancy. So
I don't think this is to do with the pregnancy, funnily enough.
No. She says Tillman would kill her if he mentioned it to anyone. So she doesn't know what she's going to do, basically. Scully then leaves the toilet and goes to Mulder and just flat out says, well, BJ's pregnant and Tillman's the father. What a grass. Mulder then carries on and sort of tells her about these. He has a letter and he says it's a 93% chance he has the letter R, and that's at the end.
Yeah.
He starts messing with it and says if he lowers the percentage, he gets an I, an E, and an R, and they start discussing what this could mean. As BJ looks at the body, she touches it and says, well, she runs her hand over it and she just says, it says brother.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Ew.
Should have put that in your predictions for the beginning of the season.
I should have, yeah. That would have been a bold prediction. If I said to you...
In episode 12.
Yeah, at some point in this season, someone's going to have the words brother carved into their chest.
The first thing I'd think, I'd be like, bloody read what's happened.
Yeah, you've watched that episode, haven't you? That's exactly. There's no way I'd have pulled that off.
Oh, I should have done that because I know something that happened. Well, I know something about one of the episodes. Because it was the first. It's one of the episodes we'll be watching soon. It was the very first episode of the X-Files I watched because I was flicking through the channels. Yeah. But anyway, there's a snake in an episode.
Ooh, that doesn't count as your prediction.
No, no, because I'd seen it. It's less prediction; it's more cheating. Anyway, Tillman now enters. Mulder starts typing and says she's right. I don't understand that. What that comment? Yeah.
No, about the brother.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. Oh, God. Tillman then enters. Mulder starts typing and starts working out what these slashes could mean, and he says that she's right. Tillman then asks what's going on. He gets annoyed because he sees this folder open with photos, and he says that these photos are from a current case. Why is she sharing these with the FBI? And Mulder says those files are from a case from 1942. Tillman's adamant that it's not. He says these are from a case that happened 3 days ago. He then checks the file and notices that it says 1942 on it. Mm. This is where he realizes that something's up. He then says that 3 days ago, a woman was murdered and had the word sister carved into her chest. He then says only him, the coroner, and he does say one other officer knew about it.
Yeah. He's been told, he's told all his staff, keep this under wraps.
Yeah, keep it quiet.
The fewer people that know about this, the better. Because we need to keep this under wraps so we can deal with it.
Another officer enters and shouts, "There's been another one."
Tells the entire room, everyone that's listening.
Yeah, I mean, Morrow probably didn't know. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. She wasn't supposed to know.
The FBI, were they meant to know? He just blabbed to everybody. He's grass.
You're fucking grass. That's bang out.
Anyway, and so then they cut straight from there to where this murder's happened, and we see this drained pool, like a swimming pool, and they say that the victim was called Werner Johnson. We see the body. They lift up this sheet, and we see sister is carved into her chest. BJ starts freezing up, and she says that this is the woman in her dream.
Mm. So at this point, I'll just let you know, and I think I said this to you at the time, because you'd already seen the episode, a lot of, like I said to before, we didn't discuss this episode, but whenever I'm watching something with somebody, I just make comments. And so I'm commenting to you, like, my feelings as we're going along, but just like little bits and bobs. Like, literally, at this point, I turned to you and went, I still don't know what's going on. Like, it's a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
And I remember the only thing you said to me throughout this episode was, you reassured me and went, it comes together at the end.
Yeah.
So I just left it at that point. I just watched it through. But
I mean, what did you have any theories about what it might be at this point?
To be honest, I mean, the only theory I could have was a normal theory, which was it's a copycat of some sort. But I didn't know what all the dreams was about. I didn't. Maybe she was like having a premonition, and just sort of figuring out. But I didn't really know, to be honest.
That I thought she was like had some kind of like clairvoyant like ability or something like that. But it seems too easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I think the thing is with me, like we said last week, I've recently finished Luther. And like sort of the cold case coming back to haunt them and copycat killers is a prominent theme in that series.
Happens all the time, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that my mind was still in that mode where I'm just like, oh, is this a copycat killer then from like 50 years ago?
I thought that initially as well, that maybe it was a copycat. But then again, with X-Files, it could be the same guy.
Yeah, like, exactly.
He's like regenerated or something like that. But anyway. We then cut to the Lincoln Park, and we see this little girl running around in the leaves with a dog, and BJ's watching on as she falls over, basically, and she gets up and she says, "Oh, it's a motherly instinct," and she says she used to hate that. She didn't want to be like that because she said her mom was the same, always worrying about her. She then goes on to tell us about her dad, who was a police officer. And she said she always wanted to be one like her dad.
Yeah.
She says that her dad said that you can't solve a crime from a dream. I didn't get that line.
No.
It came out of nowhere.
Yeah, maybe they'd spoken about it. I don't really know, yeah.
I don't know if this is meant to sort of push you down the avenue to make you think, oh, she's always been clairvoyant since she was a kid, but I don't know.
Again, at the time, it didn't really make sense to me because I was still confused as to what's going on. Looking back on it now, it just seems out of place, but maybe it was just like an off-the-cuff comment, but it's meant to steer you in that direction.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not too sure.
To sort of, and it makes the surprise a little bit more surprising, I suppose.
Yeah. She starts explaining the dream that she's been having to Mulder that she'd already explained to Scully, basically.
Yeah.
And she says the reflection that she sees has a rash on the face and also has intense eyes. She says there's a strange picture behind her. And she says it's a building that sort of looks like the Washington Monument, and there's also this circular thing besides it. At this point I thought, is this some alien thing or something like that? But then they quickly dismiss that away. Mulder asks if she could draw it, and she basically just draws a triangle and a circle next to one another. Mulder says that this could be the Trilon and the Perisphere from New York City. He says that they were the symbols of the 1939 World Fair. So again, another tie back to an old memory.
Yeah.
At this point, is there some kind of like time element to it, or you weren't sure?
Or is she just sort of getting a glimpse into the past, maybe, or something like that?
Could be that, and I'm not too sure. It sort of throws a lot at you, but you're not meant to know what it is until the end.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you that it felt like they worked the plot backwards in this one.
Yeah, but that's the thing as well. It does throw a lot at you, but it doesn't force you down any paths.
Yeah, it makes sense by the end.
And there's been episodes in the past where they've literally to subvert your expectations. They literally force you down random paths, and the result of that can be it gets a little bit loaded. It's a little bit too crazy. There's too much going on. Whereas this is a very linear. If you look at it, it's a very linear story. They throw a lot of things at you, and your mind can go with whichever way it wants. But it doesn't, like the triangle and the circle, doesn't really force you down any particular path. It just throws out there, and you can make your own judgments. And then it all works in the end. So I quite like this. Very clever way of doing it.
That's the thing. By the end of it, I was quite impressed with the plot because like you said, it's quite simple, really. But the idea behind it is quite complex. Yeah, really. So, but anyway, we then see BJ reading a report, and we see lots of pictures of mugshots. Basically, Tillman walks over and asks what she's up to. And she basically says she just wanted to check something out. And he questions why she's looking at pictures from the 40s. He doesn't really get it. And he also asks if they can talk. And he says that he'll go with her to the appointment. I didn't know what they meant at this point. I thought they just meant like scans or something. But I think it quite quickly becomes apparent he means an abortion.
Yes.
Because she says that she doesn't want to go. And he said that they'd agreed that it was the best thing. But she says that she changed her mind. So again, this is what I think is this implication anyway. But as this is happening, she's still flicking through the pictures and she sees one. And she says she recognises the face. She says that it's him. And we see this man with a rash on his face. And she said she has to go and leaves. We then cut to Mulder and Scully driving down a highway. And they're looking at this man's photo that she'd identified, and they say it's Harry Coakley, and he lives in Gainesville, Nebraska. I thought Gainesville was in Georgia or somewhere else. Maybe there's a Gainesville elsewhere. I've heard of Gainesville in another state.
I've heard of Gainesville in passing.
Yeah,
but
maybe I've got it wrong, and I'm just thinking of somewhere else. But I've heard of Gainesville somewhere else as well. But then again, there's about 4 Hollywoods in America, isn't there?
Gainesville is a city in northern Florida.
Oh, there we go. Might be that. Gainesville, Florida. Yeah. That makes sense, actually.
Could be that one.
Anyway, and they say that Coakley was released from jail in 1993, and he was convicted in 1945 of rape and attempted murder. So he's been in there a while. He apparently carved Sister onto the chest of his victim, Linda Thibodeau, or I think that's how you pronounce her name.
I think it was, yeah.
Mulder says that he's the prime suspect of other murders, and is probably the prime suspect of the ones now.
Yeah.
But Scully rightfully says that he would be 77 now. How could he do this at his age?
Yeah.
Mulder says that George Foreman won the heavyweight crown at 45. Some people are just late bloomers.
It's not the same thing.
No, I think that's very different. Yeah.
There's 30 years still difference.
Yeah, especially when you see the state of him later on. It's like, yeah, there's no way this man could be a murderer.
Well, he is a murderer.
Well,
But
could be a murderer now.
Now.
Yeah. Mulder says that he doesn't understand BJ's connection to all this, and Scully thinks that it might be cryptomnesia, which I've never heard of before, but they call it consciously forgotten information. She says that she could have heard things from her father discussing the 1942 case when she was younger and sort of just absorbed this information.
You also hear about this sort of stuff with trauma as well, where especially if you've been through something traumatic, people's brains can, to protect the body. It's very fascinating what the brain can do, but to protect the body, it will literally delete that memory, and you can go on without knowing about it. And it's to protect you. You often find, and I know it's a dark subject, but you'll find a lot of like paedophilia cases where you'll have like the children, the victims will grow up and they won't remember ever being attacked, and then you can pry, and there's like therapy you can go through to get those memories back, and it often destroys their life because they've
repressed them.
Their mind repressed it for a reason, because it was too damaging for them to cope with. There's very interesting stuff what the mind can do.
There's a side story in do you remember that program I was telling you about, the Haunting Hill House?
Yes, yeah.
One of the characters in that is a child psychologist. I don't know whether to go down this in case it's not a major spoiler to the story, but it's a spoiler for that episode, I guess.
It might be best. It's still quite recent, isn't it?
Basically, there's a bit in that where repressed memory, and this girl sort of creates something to deal with what happened, using what she saw. But that's a really good sort of showcase of that in action, I guess.
Very fascinating stuff.
The mind just works in weird ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So much stuff that can happen to it. Mulder says that that's a bit of an extreme hunch. That she would have gone into a field, into the middle of nowhere, to dig up a body based on this repressed memory, basically. And Scully rightfully says that Mulder's had a few extreme hunches in his time.
Yeah.
Fair point.
And doesn't he say I've never had any?
Yeah.
Just brushes it off.
Yeah.
Does Mulder ever look cooler than when he's driving the car with the window down? Just his hair flowing in the
wind.
He always has his arm on the dash.
It's definitely a cool look.
Popping sunflower seeds. I just think he's just a cool guy, isn't he?
He is a cool guy.
I'd like to be Mulder.
I'd like to be Mulder. That just reminded me of Spaced. You know, it's like, I would like to be Amber or whatever it is. Just imagining the different thing. Just reminded me of that. Anyway, that was out of context. That sounded creepy. In context, it's a loving reference to a beloved British comedy. We'll keep that bit in, definitely. We see that the agents start driving towards down this dirt road with these stark trees, basically. And there's this battered 2-story house.
Yeah.
It's just
run down,
yeah. They park up and knock on the door, and an old man with a nose tube answers, and it's Coakley.
He's got a rashed face.
He's got the rash face.
It's exactly how it was described still.
Yeah. But seeing the state he's in, He is absolutely run down. And we'll get into it anyway. They go in and explain about the murders to him, and he says that he doesn't remember much about it. And he says that the doctors said he was sick back then and gave him pills to sort of help him. And he says that he's better now. Mulder shows him a picture of Cheney, and he says that he doesn't recognise him.
Just sorry to interrupt again, but don't you think that would be absolutely mad? Like, imagine, I don't want to get into the sort of the argument about like the human psyche and like what, whether like you're actually in control and whatnot. I know there's a lot of stuff that I don't understand, but let's just say, for example, theoretically, you genuinely are like you're very sick. Mm-hmm. It's not you. It's something wrong with you, and you've done these atrocities. You've done these absolutely horrendous things. And you get better, right? Say that's the case, and I don't know whether that is even possible. I don't know, but say that is the case. How could you live with knowing what you've done? Do you know what I mean? That's got to be horrendous. Because if that's the case, in theory, you're still a good person.
Mm-hmm. And there's also the what you've done to other people, because you've not been punished for it. Essentially, they're always going to think that you just got away with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though they may have, like, legitimately been ill and seen done things that they weren't aware of. It's difficult. I was thinking about this recently, actually, because there was something that happened. I can't even remember what exactly it was, but somebody killed someone. And then I think they basically they didn't get away with it because they were like committed to
insanity.
Yeah, they were committed to like a mental asylum for so long, and then got out after that. And then obviously you can't be retrialed after you've been committed as insane.
Yeah.
And it does sort of make you think that, like I said, we don't know enough about the human brain to know if whether one side or the other, whether this is they are insane, they aren't in control of the body, and the stuff that they do aren't themselves. But if it was your family that had been killed, it's hard to sort of distance that, isn't it? So,
and I just can't imagine you having to live with that.
As if you were the person.
But like, I would have to go in with the mindset that this guy, despite what he says, has some he knew what he was doing to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean? You have to go in with that assumption.
That's the thing. I mean, in this, they sort of painted as quite black and white, as this man is kind of enjoyed.
Oh, he's an arsehole, isn't he? This guy is.
That's the thing.
So regardless of what happens, you can still hate him because they paint him in that picture.
In this, he is a villain, but I mean, in real life, it can be a lot more grey.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, Mulder starts explaining to him and asks him. Starts explaining about Cheney and who he was to him, and he asks him where he was 2 nights ago. And he says that he was exactly where he's sat right now. He says he sits in front of the TV 24 hours a day. And he starts getting angry that they're even accusing him of doing anything. Because he just basically says, look at the state that he's in.
How could he?
Yeah. He says to Scully if she is done with him, little sister. So again, that comes into a bit later on when they start explaining about what happened to Linda.
Yeah.
We then see BJ in her bedroom at night, and there's a wind blowing through. She's asleep, and we then start seeing headlights pass by the window, and she starts going into this dream sequence, and we see in this dream there's a flash of an upheld razor. The slashes down. Thunder crashes, and she wakes up screaming. She grabs a gun and points it around the room, but there's nobody there. The shutters start banging, and BJ starts relaxing. She feels something there and looks at her hand in the darkness, and she turns on the lamp and finds that she's covered in blood. It's on her face, her hands, and on her chest.
Yeah.
And we see there's blood on the lampshade. She goes to the bathroom and turns on the light, and
you knew what was coming.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you knew from a mile away. She starts trying to clean herself off, and then she looks down as she starts washing with water, and she sees that the word "sister" is carved on her chest. I don't understand how she wouldn't have felt that straight away. That's got to be so painful. Do you know what?
Maybe your body would go into shock though.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's weird though, like, because depending on if you see your injury and that, sometimes you don't recognise it. This is not comparable at all.
Oh God, you're going to talk about a paper cut you had, haven't you?
Basically, no. I slammed my fingers once in like a letterbox, and cut my knuckles open, like to the point where they're bleeding quite a lot. But because it was so cold, I didn't feel it at all. I just thought, I went, carried on walking. This was when I was still doing my paper round as a kid. Carried on walking. I only noticed when I got to the next house, which was like 5 minutes away, pulled out a paper and there was just blood all down the paper. I was like, what? My hand was like completely like cut open, but I just didn't even realise. So, I mean, I don't know how deep the razor cuts are, but if they're not deep enough, maybe it's the same kind of thing where, because razors are quite a clean cut as well, aren't they?
Yeah. So, I mean, completely unrelated, like it doesn't really relate to this particular, but I've done a similar thing at my old job, because talking about it being a sort of quite a clean cut, we used to work with like cutting machines, so like you'd put it onto like almost like a stencil, like a jig it was called, and so you'd put like edible paper onto this, you'd have the big hydraulic presser, and then it just cuts it all out with using the the press, basically. Yeah, exactly. And I was cleaning one of those, and I accidentally swiped my finger across this blade, and it just as like a searing pain. It's like it's like a paper cut.
That's
right.
That's the thing.
And I looked at it, and I could see my thumb was split open, but nothing more. It just looked like a skin thing. I thought I better go get a plaster on this because I'm working with food, so go and get it cleaned up. Walked to the door, and as I went to open the door, just left a huge blood, and I looked. Because it was such a clean cut, it didn't start bleeding for like 5 seconds. It was so strange, and then it just pissed blood for an hour.
it's a thing, isn't it? Like when it's such a clean cut. Like I've done it with myself. Like when I've cut the end of my finger off with a scalpel while I was doing.
God.
you know I do like plastic models. I literally cut the end of my finger off by accident. But because it didn't really hurt. It just bled.
Yeah,
and then. This was 11 o'clock at night and my dad didn't know what to do, so he just bandaged it. I look ridiculous. I look like a comedy character with a massive bandage on my finger.
Like a light bulb on your finger.
Basically. But yeah, like I think like with like a clean like razor cut, you might not feel it, so maybe it was something like that.
Yeah.
But then like
it seems unlikely.
Yeah. I mean,
because like
we'll test it out. We then see her look into a full-length mirror, and she sees the reflection of a young Coakley. She screams, and then when she turns around again, he's gone.
I started to think at this point, maybe it's something to do with him, like the young version of him coming forward in time. I know it's a stretch, but that's like I'm not opposed to seeing that in X-Files.
I was going to say I don't think it's a stretch in the X-Files program. So
like maybe like I thought. This is the way my mind was working. Maybe this is what I thought was going to happen. Maybe that what he did back when he was younger was so terrible that, because we've already said he was ill, right? And then he got better because of these pills or whatever. Maybe what he did was so terrible that like his personality split and like his subconscious left his body, leaving him to go on a normal life, and then his bad personality to live on. Do you know what I mean? That's what I thought it was going to be.
Do you know what? I've only just read that tangent. We might as well just keep going. I only just heard about this recently. There's something like that. There's a theory of it's called like I think it's like twin personality or something like that. Okay. Have you seen the trailer to that? Us, the new horror film.
I have seen the trailer. Yes.
There's theories at the moment that's like similar to that. It's going to be like about basically the other side of them is their, I don't know how to put this, PC as two white guys basically. But basically it's supposed to be about like their repressed ethnicity or something like that. Because the way they are in the trailer is the way they're acting is more suburban, I guess. You know what I mean? Like they're all talking about vodka o'clock, and you know, it's that typical white girl thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, and apparently it's meant to be about a split between them, and they've created these two like sort of personas. Yeah. I was like, that's really interesting, and I looked into it, and there's shitloads of theories. It's really interesting. Again, probably not the best people to talk about like racial like profiling and stuff like that. But that was a theory I saw on there. But I can't wait for that film. It's gonna be so good.
Yeah, it does look really good.
But anyway.
So I mean, she then has this black and white vision, and in this vision, she starts prying up the floorboards.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Hang on a bit, you sound a bit different, Checks.
Do I?
Little bit. What's going on there?
Shall we give our listeners a peek behind the curtain of the disastrous day we've had?
Yeah, probably best to. Shall I get from my perspective first?
Your voice sounds the best.
So I was editing the episode today. This is a Monday evening. Usually I try and get it edited by Tuesday to get it out. And as I'm editing it today on my lunch, I noticed that we have about 10 minutes left of the episode, or 10 minutes left of recording. And we're still talking about halfway through the episode, and I was a bit curious as to what was actually happening there. I messaged you and sort of let you know that there might be a problem. Carried on listening, and then all of a sudden I say, "Oh, it seems we've got a bit of a low space problem. Let me just check on that." And then the audio stops.
It's part and parcel of podcasting. We've all got our troubles. We will not be held back. We are going to persevere, and we're still going to get this episode out, even if it is through a Skype call, even if it is 2 weeks after watching the episode.
Yeah, I mean,
we will record again.
Luckily, we have our trusty notes, so we can carry on. We can continue. So
yeah, and we're just going to pretend to be as witty as we was last time. If the quality of this episode isn't up to scratch, just know, listeners, our faithful listeners, that the first time was so good.
Yeah, it was brilliant, and you'll never hear it, unfortunately.
It was probably the best podcast we've done.
Probably the best podcast ever made, I'd say.
It's such a shame. Well, this is just a tribute to the best podcast episode.
Right. Let's carry on then from where we left off. So last time, BJ had just woken up. She had her sister carved into her chest. She looked in the mirror, saw a reflection of a young Coakley, and started screaming and whirling around. We then see this black and white vision, as I just mentioned, and then we cut to somebody prying up a floorboard with a crowbar. We see a man grunting, and he drags a body in this sack and dumps it under the floor. And then this immediately cuts to BJ, who's now ripping up these floorboards with a crowbar. And she's in somebody else's house by the looks of it.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. Like, again, we've got those visions again, haven't we, of that we've had sort of previously, this sort of almost like vivid dreams.
And yeah, we see Mulder and Scully and Tillman are being led down the basement by the owner of this house, who says that BJ had just barged past her. And we see Tillman see the words on BJ's chest now, and he says that he's taking her to the hospital. Mulder notices something though, and he sees something under these floorboards, and we notice that it's another skeleton.
So again, those dreams have come to fruition. So something's going on. We can see that.
Yeah.
And again, very difficult to remember from 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I do sort of recall thinking to myself at the time, like, I still don't really know what's going on. But I think that's the point of it. I think that the idea is to keep you guessing right until the end.
Pretty much, yeah. We then cut to the Memorial Hospital in Aubrey, Missouri. And we see they're in BJ's room. A nurse leaves as Mulder and Scully enter. And Scully's got a bag full of clothes for BJ. And they ask what happened. And BJ says that Coakley was in the room with her. She says that he attacked her, and she says he looked just like he did in the picture. Scully says that they'll go and bring him in for questioning. We're then in an interrogation room in the Aubrey police station, and Coakley and Tillman are sitting at a table. Mulder and Scully are standing watching over, and Tillman asks where Coakley was last night, and Coakley, who's nonplussed by it all, just says he was in Honolulu. They ask how he got into Morrow's house, and he jokes. He starts joking again. I don't really remember exactly what he said, but he said that he's already paid for his crimes. He feels like he's been harassed, and he says that he never touched Morrow, and he wants to speak to a lawyer. Which you can see in this scene, like it's an impossibility. Like he's on death's door by the looks of it. Pretty much, yeah. I mean, at this point, he's having oxygen. He's unable to move. Then, yeah, it seems unlikely that he's going to be the suspect in all this. And it's certainly not the suspect that she saw, which is the younger version. So, regardless of whether it's him or not, it's not the same person. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So then we're then in Mulder's hotel. We're then in Mulder's motel room. He's eating sunflower seeds, and he's looking over a picture of a young Coakley. And Scully knocks on the door. She comes in and says that she has test results of the blood under her fingernails, I think it was, under BJ's fingernails, and it matches Coakley's, or there's parts of it that match Coakley's. I can't remember the exact term, but there's a scientific term for the parts that they match. Mulder asks why he would let Morrow live, and Scully says that he did let Thibodeau survive. So Mulder then says that possibly they need to speak to Thibodeau now. I mean, yeah, it's the logical next step, isn't it? Yeah. I suppose it's that age-old thing of basically if every other option is ruled out, you've got to go down the most sort of implausible trail. What's it called now? I can't remember who said it. I can't even remember who said it. But yeah, regardless of how bizarre it might be, you've got to follow that trail, because if all the logical explanations have been ruled out, then the illogical explanation is the truth. Yeah. We then cut to Thibodeau's residence, and we see a picture of a young-looking woman. We find this is Mrs. Thibodeau. And she says this was 3 weeks before it happened, and she hasn't been able to take a picture since. We then see a picture of her and her husband, and she says that Martin, who's her husband, was a good man. Unfortunately, he's died now, but she says that she wouldn't have survived this long without him. Scully asks about that night, and she says it happened on the landing of this house, and she points to the actual stairs. She says that the light of the window was bouncing off the razor blade as he lifted it. And she says Coakley was saying, someone's got to take the blame, little sister, and it isn't going to be me. We then hear about in the trial, the defense said that his father used to beat him, but she just says that he was born evil. Yeah, and it all starts to add up a little bit, because with the whole little sister reference, that would make sense with sort of brother and sister carved onto the bodies, etc. So that all ties in. It all points towards this guy, but like we said before, it can't be him. Like, so at this, it's so difficult to figure out what's going on at this point. I do like the way this episode plays it out, because it does keep you guessing right up until the big reveal, but it's not like taking you down dark alleys. It's not trying to sort of swerve you. It's just giving you just enough information to keep you wanting to find out more. Yeah, basically, it's like I said, the plot itself is actually quite it's quite straightforward. The actual plot is, even though what they're talking about is quite complex, I guess, the actual outcome. Yeah, definitely. They say about the trial. His father used to be him, and she says that he was born evil. We see a picture of Thibodeau and her husband at the World Fair, which was mentioned earlier, about these symbols, the triangle and the circle, or the sphere. And we find out that Thibodeau had also gotten pregnant from her rape, basically. and she couldn't keep the kid. She considered the child a spawn of evil, is the word that she uses. So she adopted away the baby, and she says that he'd probably be almost 50 now. And he gives them. She pulls out some details from behind a picture, and it was the adoption agency's address for them to investigate more.
Yeah, which is, again, makes sense, and that's when you sort of. It gives you a kind of hint as to what's going on. You can sort of put the pieces together at this point. I'm not going to lie, I didn't. I literally waited until Scully said it. But looking back on it, you can see where they sort of give you those hints as to what's going to happen. Because I think the biggest thing that throws you off is, how is BJ involved?
Yeah.
You know it's something to do with him. It's got to be, because obviously he was involved originally. But I couldn't see how BJ was involved. And looking back on it, it seems silly how I didn't put it together.
To be honest, I think I was the same. I didn't realize what the actual plot was until it was pretty much spelt out for me by Scully.
Yeah, exactly.
We then cut back to Mulder's motel room, and we see papers and some flower seeds scattered all around. Scully says that the bones under the house were of Cheney's partner, and they also found a razor in the house, so they're trying to lift Coakley's prints from this now. And Scully thinks that if they do, they'll have enough to pin these two murders on him. Mulder says that something doesn't add up, though, and he says that BJ claims that she saw a younger man and thinks that maybe it's Coakley's grandson. He starts talking about how genetic traits skip a generation, and it would explain the blood tests that they'd got from her fingernails. Mulder goes on to say that when he was a kid, he used to have nightmares, and he would think that he was the only person in the world. And then he'd wake up and he'd hear this crunching sound, and he'd find his dad eating sunflower seeds in the study. And he goes on to theorize that maybe more than biological traits get passed down through the generations. He says maybe he likes sunflower seeds because he's genetically predisposed to liking them from his dad.
And again, a really interesting conversation. And it's almost it's almost a shame that it's just like a byproduct of this episode, because I feel like there's something that could be done a lot more. Sorry, I feel like a lot more could be done with this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a really interesting concept, and like he does go on to say that it's something that Jung wrote about this genetic memory. And I know me and you have seen it in like the Assassin's Creed games and stuff, like this genetic memory passed down and stuff like that. Yeah. So
the idea being, how does a bird know how to fly south? Even birds that are separated from the nest.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they've got to have that instinct, and where does that instinct come from? And the idea being it gets passed down in genetics.
Yeah.
So it is very interesting, and there's definitely it's an interesting debate, the whole nurture versus nature thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is all. I mean, I love the fact that they've used this. It is a shame that it's a byproduct of the episode rather than focused on entirely.
But I do kind of like that, because, like I said, it keeps it quite simple, that it's just there's one supernatural element to it. But other than that, it's just a murder mystery, I guess. Yeah,
you've got a point. And yeah, that's fair enough, because it might be, for all I know, it could have bogged it down.
Yeah. Like I said, it's quite a straightforward X-file, I guess. I mean, when we figure it out. Yeah, Scully says, she's got the adoption agency on the phone, and she then says that the son of Thebaju was a policeman who was named Raymond Morrow. And it's this point where Mulder starts thinking, and he starts piecing it together, that maybe Coakley's compulsions have been passed on genetically to BJ.
Yeah, this is the light switch moment for me.
Yeah.
This is where I was like, oh, I get it, and it all made sense. It all cut together. And so what you assumed at that point is these flashbacks that you've been seeing, these sort of black and white sequences, are almost genetic imprints.
Yeah, yeah, and I like how the follow up to this is literally them now going. They've done the big reveal, and then it's like now the action of what actually happens there. So
Well, exactly. I mean, that's kind of the way the X-Files episodes work. Like, you know what I mean? As soon as you find out what's going on, then the pace really picks up. I just wanted to note here, I actually found it really interesting with those flashback sequences. I think I struggled to figure out what they was, because you assume that she can see these because we're viewing it as a visual representation of what's going on.
yeah,
You assume that's the way she can see it, but it's not. It's literally like she doesn't remember any of this, or not to the majority of the extent. Like sometimes she doesn't remember anything. It's because it's just a genetic imprint. It's like like an instinct. But it's interesting that the way they changed the sort of the color palette, and they changed the sort of style of filming to represent that, and it's just really, really interesting filmmaking.
Yeah, I quite liked the next scene as well, with just the action of it, and I'll go through it as quickly as I can because I think it's a bit lost in this type of setting, I guess.
No, you go for it. I'll stay quiet.
We're in Feberjew's house in the kitchen, and we see Feberjew who's wearing an apron. She's cleaning an oven, basically. And she's got a bottle of ammonia, which she's using to do this, which comes into play a bit later. She leaves and goes into another room, and back in the kitchen, we see a hand pick up an iron that was sitting on the ironing board. And then as we see Feberjew, who's folding her apron in the other room, she hears a sound, turns around, and we see BJ rush towards her and try to attack her with the iron. Now, at this point, her appearance has changed dramatically, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's almost like she's taking on all of BJ's physical traits as well.
Exactly.
So it's quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, she looks very grunge-esque, doesn't she, with the flannel like shirt and the long hair down, like.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I thought that the what was it that she sprayed in the face again? Sorry.
Ammonia, I think it was.
Yeah, I thought it was the ammonia that made her face sort of like blotched and scabbed almost. But I went back and had a look, and it's actually not. Her face is getting like that anyway.
Yeah, I saw that.
So that, again, another physical trait that she's taking on. So this is more than just, a bird flying south. This is something that's been passed down, and she's embodying it almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Like she's becoming him.
And yeah, like as you mentioned, Feberjew throws the ammonia on BJ's face. She sort of clutches at her face and carries on chasing her into another room. And we see, she pulls out a revolver out of a drawer, and BJ starts approaching her as she points the gun at her. And BJ starts saying the same catchphrase that Coakley did when he attacked Feberjew on the stairs. I
wouldn't quite call it a catchphrase, but I don't think that's going to take off a comedy show.
Yeah. Well, everyone's got to have their own, I mean, surely some horror icons have got to have catchphrases as well.
Well, if we was to have a catchphrase on this show, what would ours be?
The recording's knackered.
That would be yours. Oh no.
I'm sure like some horror icons have got catchphrases. What do they say? What does Freddy Krueger say? They need to say bitch.
Well, I don't know. It depends what you count as a catchphrase, because I suppose there isn't any more famous than "Here's Johnny."
Yeah, exactly.
But is it a catchphrase if they say it once and it just becomes popular? You've also got the what's his name in Silence of the Lambs? Hannibal Lecter, and his Chianti.
It's not a catchphrase. It's a sound, isn't it?
It's a popular sound.
Okay, we'll call this his popular phrase, not a catchphrase. So BJ pulls the razor and starts backing Linda up the stairs. And Linda even says at this point, Linda Feberjew, should I say, says that BJ's got his eyes. BJ looks at this World Fair picture that we saw from earlier and starts sort of having this moment of like clarity. And Linda then realizes who she is, and she says that she's her granddaughter. BJ like sort of gets angry at this and rips Linda's shirt, and we see that she's still got the scars on her chest of her sister. And then BJ rips her own shirt, and she also has the same as we saw. And Linda then says that he's done this to both of them. BJ gets angry and then lifts the razor up, and we hear a scream as it comes down.
Again, great filmmaking, just on a separate point, just because it exactly mirrors the scene described earlier when it happened to her in her youth. To the point of her holding up the blade and the sort of light shining off it from that window, that exact same location, exact same scenario. So it's nice to sort of mirror that and just sort of show how, yes, you could call it a coincidence, but I think it's more to show how much like him she has become. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, it's the mirroring of it is sort of a nice touch, I think. So
yeah.
We then cut to Mulder and Scully arriving outside. They burst in, and we see Linda, who's on the floor, but she's fine. She's not been hurt, and she says that she wanted to kill her, but something stopped her. This BJ wanted to kill her. She says that she didn't know where she's gone. And Mulder calls an ambulance and puts out an APB on Morrow. Scully says that the first murder happened after BJ found out that she was pregnant, and thinks she'll be heading to Tillman, looking for someone to blame. But Mulder thinks that she'll be heading to Coakley, figuring that he'll be blaming her for passing this on, basically. And at this point, Mulder calls Coakley and finds that he's not answering his phone.
Another one of Mulder's hunches that eventually ends up being right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. For someone, because he wasn't sold on this initially, was he? He was sort of a bit dismissive, and then about how she knew about all these things. But yeah, he's pretty good at he's guessing now.
Yeah, well, when he confirms that it's weird or strange, then he knows exactly where to go with it. It's when a case seems normal that he has no clue what to do.
Pretty much, yeah. He's not great at just human interest, is he?
No. I'd like to see him on a burglary case and him just looking around going, I've got no idea how they got in. Like a window smashed.
Yeah, brick in there.
No, he's just scratching his head in the middle of the room.
We then go to the police headquarters, and Mrs. Thebadew's giving a statement. Tillman bursts into the office. He's pissed off. He's shouting at Scully for accusing BJ. And Scully explains what has just happened, and Tillman can't believe it. He's disputing it completely. And Linda just gets up and says that it's true, and Tillman just stops. He just stops shouting.
Yep. Yeah, it's over.
yeah, he's quite easily convinced. We then cut to Coakley's living room, and we see a black and white movie playing on the TV. Did you catch what the film was?
I didn't know, did you?
It was a film called His Girl Friday. I don't know if that's got any plot significance.
His Girl Friday?
Yeah.
Well, the great thing about doing this over Skype is I can have a quick look.
Yeah, the good thing about having the computer right in front of you. Yeah. So yeah, Coakley sat watching this film, and he finds that these oxygen tubes being cut, and he starts hearing creaking around the house. He turns off the TV and he sees a shadow in another room. He starts walking towards the shadow, and we see the glint of a razor.
Yep.
Mulder arrives outside, and then we cut back inside and we see Morrow approaching Coakley with a razor. She asks how it feels to be on the other side of the razor and starts slashing towards him, and then starts actually connecting with him, and he starts begging. She says it doesn't stop until he's dead. Did you find out what His Girl Friday was? What was it about, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, I had a quick look. it doesn't seem to be of anything really.
It's an old film.
I'll read you the plot synopsis.
Okay.
So, when hard-charging New York newspaper editor Walter Burns discovers that his ex-wife, investigative reporter Hildy Johnson, has gotten engaged to an insurance agent Bruce Baldwin, he unsuccessfully tries to lure her away from tame domestic life with a story about the impending execution of convicted murderer Earl Williams. But when Hildy discovers Williams may be innocent, her reporter instinct takes over.
Well, I mean, it's got a murderer in it. That's about it.
I mean, is that all it takes now? Is that what we count as a reference?
I guess.
It also has a man and a woman in it.
Oh.
The plot thickens.
Quite literally in this case. Mulder then breaks into the house, gun drawn, and we hear and see Coakley on the floor groaning and wheezing. Mulder goes over to check on him and then turns around as he hears a noise, and we see BJ charge at him with the oxygen tank and just smacks him straight in the head and knocks him down.
Yeah, this looks painful.
Yeah. We see Mulder is on the floor and BJ stands over him with a razor. And then this is when we start seeing flashes of between Mulder and the old FBI agent who was dead at the beginning, Cheney. Scully arrives and tells BJ to freeze as she points her gun at her. And Tillman's there too, and actually sees her in the act now.
Yeah, it's an incredible coincidence when you think about it that two of the deaths just happen to happen. Well, I say two of the deaths. Two of the I don't know how to say this. Two of the scenarios that are played out over both timelines just happen to happen in the exact same way. Do you know what I mean?
True, yeah. I know what you mean.
It's a bit of a coincidence there. She just happens to corner, what was that woman's name on the stairs?
Oh, Thebaju.
Thebaju, yeah. Yeah, she happens to corner on the stairs with a blade at that time, and then Mulder just happens to be scurrying away. There's a lot of coincidences that have to happen for this to play out. But, you take it with a pinch of salt.
Pretty much. We then see... she says that she's not BJ. This is Morrow speaking, and she starts drawing blood on Mulder's neck with the razor. And we see Coakley gasping for breath, and he takes one last breath and then dies. BJ sees what she's done and stops, gets off Mulder, and Tillman takes her in and tells her everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, again, strange, because if this is what we're led to believe is like a genetic passed down to her, then you would assume that it would stay there regardless whether he's alive or not. So it's an interesting concept. I'm not really sure why it suddenly stops when he dies. Whether it's just that she's realised what she's done, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because it would sort of imply that it's more of a psychological thing if she's associating herself with him and then he suddenly sees him die and then stops, I guess.
Exactly. And of course, on top of all this, you've got the added interesting part of her being pregnant.
True. And
pass down further onto her offspring. Like, this might not end with him dying.
And then we'll just finish on the last scene. We're at the Shamrock Women's Prison in the psychiatric ward, and we get a Scully report. And she says that they're continuing genetic testing on Morrow. She says that she may have had a mutated gene, which activated dormant genes in her, but the results are inconclusive. She says that Morrow has shown no more signs of changing after this, and they're continuing to find out if the pregnancy was a catalyst for this transformation. Basically, they're unable to detect the effects on the baby, and we see Morrow in a cell holding her stomach at this point. Scully says that the child's male, and she also says that Morrow's been on suicide watch for 2 weeks after trying to forcibly abort her son. And then we find out that Tillman is adopting the child. And that's the end of the episode, really.
which goes back to what we were saying, where you assume this story's carrying on after Mulder and Scully leave it.
Yeah, with every X-File, it always ends on a little note that leaves it still open, and just a tiny bit. So, yeah. So yeah, that was the end of the episode. What did you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. I quite enjoyed that being led down the garden path, but never truly having the blindfold taken off you until right at the end. You sort of always, you're being led, but you're always guessing as to which way it goes, or guessing as to how certain people are involved. And then once you get that big reveal, like you said, it really does sort of just ramp up. But what I think really makes this episode work is the performances.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw Terry O'Quinn, I mean, I love Terry O'Quinn. He'll always be Locke to me. And so I knew I was going to get a good performance from him. But the surprise of the episode, I mean, not a surprise because I didn't really know, but Deborah Strang as BJ, I thought she was phenomenal. I really did. I thought the subtleties in her performance when she was playing herself as opposed to herself as the killer. You know what I mean? You could really tell the difference between the two characters.
Yeah, it really was a different. She was playing two characters in it, so yeah, it was great. Like the difference was perfect in it.
Yeah, and it wasn't kooky. You know what I mean? It wasn't. It's so easy for it to be almost a gimmick, where it wasn't. It was nuanced. It was just enough subtlety to let you know that, oh, hang about, this is a different person. This is Coakley. This isn't BJ.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
What about you? What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a really tight, like, told story. It was like well told, and it just felt like a nice one-off, like, kind of story. I know we've had quite a few of these Monster of the Weeks, I guess, but I know they're called Monster of the Week, but this wasn't really a monster. It was just like this murder mystery story, I guess. It was quite classic, but with an X-Files spin. I like the story idea about this genetic memory. That's just a really interesting, like, concept, and I think that really helped the episode. And as you mentioned, the cast really helped propel the story forward. Terry O'Quinn and was it Strang? Deborah Strang. Yeah, I thought both of those complemented Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny really well, and they just played off one another really well. But yeah, it wasn't the greatest episode of X-Files I'd seen, but it was a really solid one. So yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, it's been a strange season, really, because you had that incredible mythology arc, almost, I think it was like 4 or 5 episodes in, and it was just so good that I feel like it struggled a little bit to live up to that. Like, in a lot of, well, not just this show, in a lot of different shows, seasons tend to ramp up from the beginning right till the end, and you're on a constant incline, whereas they've taken it a different approach this season, and they did give you those big moments early on in the season. I'm interested to see where the end of the season goes. Because in that case, if it goes back up again, then I'm okay with this. I'm okay with not every episode being stellar, because not every episode needs to be. No,
exactly. And like I said, this is the 12th episode of the series, so about halfway through, and we've had some really, really good episodes, I think, in this one. In this series, should I say. Some really standout episodes. So yeah, I mean, not everyone needs to be amazing, knocking it at the park, like, in terms of like the mythology. So exactly. Yeah. Right, shall we quickly rattle through my favorite part of the show?
Luke's production notes.
Did you sing it in your head as well?
I just sort of left a bit of a pause for that. That'll work, though. That'll work. I'll carry on with this then. So Aubrey was written by Sarah B. Chano, who has made her first writing contribution to the series. Yeah, we both noted at the beginning that we'd not seen her name on the sheet before. Charno's initial script revolved around the concept of 50-year-old murders and the transfer of genetic memories before she expanded the premise, incorporating elements of another story idea revolving around a female serial killer. Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who had written for the X-Files before, as we know, helped Charno refine the story, and the script was revised shortly before shooting, which resulted in new scenes being added during production, such as the scene in which BJ attacks Mulder.
Interesting. Yeah, what I find interesting about that actually is what we said earlier, in the sense of the genetic memories was probably going to be a much bigger part of it. But so I assume that it didn't work for one reason or the other, and maybe it was just because it needed to be grounded in a nice, simple plot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think you need that connection to the real life world, I guess, to ground it, and that probably needs to be a more integral part, maybe, sometimes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, I suppose you can sort of look into all of these weird and wonderful theories, but if you've not got the characters to sort of ground it, then you've not got anything. You've got a half-arsed documentary.
Yeah, pretty much. During the casting process, Morgan and Wong suggested that the show use Harry Coakley. Was that his name? Was the actor's name?
No, Morgan Woodward is the actor.
Morgan Woodward. I don't know why they put Harry Coakley here.
He's a method actor.
Who had previously worked for them on the Fox series 21 Jump Street.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a series.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard talk about it being like, because the film's meant to be like a remake of it, I guess. Apparently, there's supposed to be actors from it in that as well.
Oh, really?
Something like that, yeah.
I'll have to look into that. No, I've never heard of the series. I obviously heard of the films, but
actually, I do remember what bit it's on there now. Do you know? It's in 22 Jump Street. Do you know the film's all at the end?
Yeah.
In one of those, I think one's called like 27 Jump Street Generations, and it's sort of like taking the mick out of, do you know, Star Trek Generations, where they added all the captains in it?
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. They meet up with the old crew or something like that. I didn't know who the guy was, but and then last one, series creator Chris Carter was happy with the finished episode, later noting, "I think it came out great, and that Rob Bowman came through for us and gave us an excellent job." Bowman himself later declared that he was proud of the scene in which BJ woke up with blood all over herself. Carter was also pleased with the episode's casting. He calls Morgan Woodward excellent, and said that Deborah Strang's performance was top notch. Strang's performance was later submitted for an Emmy nomination, although she didn't make the final list.
Again, it just echoes what we've said, doesn't it? Couldn't agree more with that. It really does carry the episode. Yeah,
exactly. So that's production notes for this week. We will keep it quick because we understand that this isn't probably the best way to listen to us talk.
Oh, definitely. And I'd like to take this moment to apologize. This is just one of those things where a computer just messed up. It messed us around.
Yeah.
And I'm sat here in my lounge where coming on to 11 o'clock at night. But we're doing it. We're getting there.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's as I said, it's been an experience.
Yeah. I don't think we'll record like this in future unless we're forced to. So we'll be back.
That is exactly why, because it's so difficult to read you when I'm not in front of you. And to be honest, you know what? This podcast has been a really good reason for us to get together and just sort of have a chat and just sort of, you know what I mean? Just like have a good laugh. And so I don't think I'd want to give that up. Although in a fix, Skype does the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's handy at the moment because I wouldn't have liked to all of a sudden just dropped everything and tried to set a recording up for tonight. But over Skype's fine for now.
Well, especially not because I believe this episode is due to go out on my birthday, which is Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I'm so busy this week as it is. I would not have been able to get down to you. So at least we've managed to re-record it. That's the main thing.
Right. So we'll wrap up here. If you want to get in contact with us, you can find us on Facebook if you just search for Most Unwanted. Twitter is Most Unwanted Pod, and we're also on Instagram if you search for Most Unwanted. Or if you just want to email us, it's mostunwantedpodcast@gmail.com. But you'll find all those in the links below. Next week, we're tackling the episode Irresistible. Any ideas what that's going to be, Checks?
Ooh, I don't know. It could be anything, really. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. It leaves it open a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what that entails next week anyway. Where you'll actually hear us in the same room.
Oh, fingers crossed.
But yeah, for this week, we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Lou, let's never do this ever again.